Hunting the poor man's grizzly bear. I like to hunt wild hogs with handguns. It's one of the biggest thrills I know. Today I'm going to change things up on you guys a little bit. I've been talking about archery and bow hunting mostly, but one of my other great passions is hunting with handguns, and I especially like to hunt big wild boars. There's three reasons that I like to hunt wild boars with handguns. One of the reasons is I live here in Texas, and we are overrun with wild hogs. Our state spends millions of dollars every year trying to control these things that cost farmers and ranchers millions of dollars. They cause wrecks. They can be a real nuisance. They compete with other wildlife. They eat mast, acorns, they cause all kind of problems. So every time you kill one, you've done the environment a good thing. Another reason I like to hunt them is I'm a reloader, and I like big bore handguns, and I like tinkering with different calibers and different bullets and different grains of powder. And a wild boar is probably one of the best targets to experiment with those kind of things that I know of. A wild boar, especially a big mature one, has got him a thick gristle plate over his vitals, about that thick, that you can hardly stick a knife through it. So a bullet's got to go through that gristle plate first before it can do any damage. Another reason I really like hunting wild hogs is you got to get close to them with an open-sighted handgun. Anybody can shoot one from distance with a rifle, and there's nothing wrong with that. People trap them and poison them and do all kind of things, but a wild hog is really smart. They might not seem that way, but once you start pressuring them and really hunting them, they're just a incredibly smart animal. You'll see a lot of videos on the internet and TV where people are hunting these canned hunts and high fences, and they're basically domestic hogs they've turned loose. But hunting a real wild hog on his own environment, he is a smart animal, and he can be pretty dangerous and challenging at times too. So let me talk to you about what I know about this, and I think you'll find this interesting. Now down here we hunt wild hogs basically three different ways. You can hunt them with dogs, and that's probably one of the most exciting ways to do it. I've done that a little bit, but it's probably the easiest way to be successful. And you have to have thousands of acres to run dogs to hunt, so I don't do just a whole lot of that. It is exciting. Lots of guys do it. Lots of guys are very successful doing that. Another way is people hunt them over bait. Most of Texas is real thick, and wild hogs will come to corn like a magnet. Now, they won't just come strutting right out to a corn feeder. It's usually in the middle of the night, or sometimes they'll do it. If they're not pressured, they'll come out in the daylight, but there's certain techniques that work better than others to get them to come to bait. I do a lot of that, and also probably the way I've killed most of my wild hogs is on the ground, just walking around. You can spot and stalk hogs, but where I hunt is usually so thick you can't spot them and stalk them. So I guess you would say what I do is more still hunting, and I'll just walk through swamps or thick brush. I kind of know where they're at and when they're moving, and I'll hear them and try to move in on them downwind. However you do it, it can be a really, really exciting thing. Now, I've hunted hogs with just about every weapon you can think of, but just about one of my favorite things to use are big bore handguns. I've had a lot of success with them over the years, and I've used tons of different guns. So these guns I've got here are just kind of a selection. I've killed hogs with these guns, but they're just kind of an example of what I've used over the years, what's worked for me. I'll just say it out front right now. If you're not a hand loader, a 44 Magnum is the way to go. You can just buy your ammo off the shelf and you can practice with 44 specials with low recoil. A 44 Magnum is just gonna really do you a good job. Having said that, if you are a hand loader, my favorite caliber to use is 45 Colt. Now this right here is a Ruger Blackhawk. It's a flat top, and it's unloaded. But I made these elk antler grips for it. But I've killed a lot of hogs with this gun. Now the thing about 45 Colt, it can be kind of anemic in a regular gun, but in a Ruger, you can stoke that up, and you can really hot load that thing with a reloading manual if you're within specs. You're not getting any high pressure signs or anything, and I actually do prefer this a little bit better than the 44 Magnum. It just throws that big old heavy 45 slug, you know, and it hits them really hard. I just prefer a little bit bigger, heavier bullet, and this will let me do it. I just have had more success with this caliber. I've probably killed more hogs with this than I have any other gun. That right there is probably my favorite big bore handgun. Another gun that I've used a lot, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit skeptical when I first started trying this, is a 10 millimeter. Now that's a Ruger GP100 10 millimeter, and this is a little bit on the small side, and like I said, I was kind of skeptical when I started using that, but that gun does a good job. It's light and it's handy, and it's accurate. That 180 grain bullet, you know, it's moving fast enough that it hits them pretty good. And like I said, 40 caliber 10 millimeter is about as small as I'd want to go. This is a Springfield 1911 10 millimeter, and I've killed a lot of hogs with this gun as well. I put Packmeyer grips on here, took the wood grips off just because they handle the recoil a little bit better. But that is a really accurate gun that has performed really well for me over the years. Now this is going to be kind of controversial. This is a Springfield 1911 45 ACP. A lot of guys will tell you that a 45 ACP has no business hunting hogs. It's too small to hunt with. Well, I disagree with that. I've killed a lot of hogs, even some big boars with this. Now, having said that, I don't think it's your best way to go. It does not hit as hard as these other guns. You know, if it does really good on your 200-pound class wild hogs, does really good on sows. When you get into some of those huge wild boars like these I've got down here, you know, I do prefer to have more horsepower. Get through that big, thick gristle shield I was talking about. But nonetheless, that 45 ACP has worked for me. I don't think that's the best way to go, but it has put a lot of hogs on the ground for me. I'm liking this 10 millimeter 1911 more and more. I think it's about the bare minimum I feel comfortable with on hunting hogs, but so far it's doing a good job. If I don't mention you guys' favorite gun or caliber, it doesn't mean it's not a good one. We've got a short time frame to talk about this, so I'm just talking about a few guns, but there's a lot of good guns out there that will work. You know, some people say, well, I can use a 22 or 22 short, and you know, I shoot hogs in the ear, or I shoot them in the head and all this. That's not what this video is about. You know, I'm not talking about executing a hog in a trap or taking a real close range shot. I'm talking about what handgun calibers are going to work in a hunting situation where you're shooting him in the vitals, the heart-lung area, and the kind of shots you would have while you're out in the woods hunting, not when you're, you know, shooting him in a trap or have a scoped rifle with, you know, perfect precision. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now there's some other guns that I didn't mention. There are some bigger revolvers, some big calibers out there, 50 caliber, 454 Casull, 480. They do a really, really good job. I kind of steer away from those because once a handgun gets that big and heavy, I would just assume carry a carbine or a small rifle. Those will work really good too. I tend to like the lighter weight, more packable guns. Another gun I haven't mentioned, and it can work good on medium-sized hogs, but it's a 357 Magnum. Now I love a 357 Magnum, but I'm telling you guys, in my opinion, even though it hits way harder than the 45 ACP, it's just a little bit too small. It's going to work really good on your middleweight hogs, but some of these hogs we've killed have, been really big hogs. I'm talking, between 350 and 400 pounds they've topped on the scales. So when you get into that class of hog, you might kill the thing, but if it runs off into the brush and dies and you don't find it, well, that's not what you want. 357 Magnum is a really good caliber, a really good cartridge for what it was designed for, but I think it's a bit small for this. Just as important as the gun you shoot it out of is the bullet you shoot. Now, when you hunt, there's several ways to go on this. You can use hard cast bullets, or you can use a tough jacketed hollow point, or you can use a jacketed soft point. Now, as a hand loader, for years I've cast hard lead bullets, and I thought that was the way to go. And I'll say this, they'll out-penetrate anything. If you're just trying to kill it, nothing is going to out-penetrate a heavy hard cast bullet. They are not going to give you the blood trails, though, that a jacketed expanding bullet will give you. A lot of guys will kill 5 or 6 hogs with a bullet and they'll say, that's great. You can't make a conclusion on that. Hard cast bullets will out-penetrate anything. They'll shoot through a tree, they'll shoot through a grizzly bear, they'll do a job, but the problem with them is they don't leave a blood trail. And where I hunt, it's so thick. I'm going to show you guys some footage of the places I hunt and what the hogs live in. And if that hog runs, which 95% of the time, unless you hit heavy bone, that hog is going to run. And if you don't have a blood trail to follow, you're probably not going to find him if you don't have a dog with you. But hard cast bullets have their place. If you're hunting in a really open area where you can, find that animal. But when you're hunting in thick brush like I do, you want a tough, expanding bullet that's going to leave you a good blood trail. Now, this is the kind of brush I'm talking about that our hogs here in East Texas especially like to live in. If you don't have a handgun that's got a good bullet that's going to leave you a good blood trail, you can just imagine what it's like having to crawl through this stuff for hundreds of yards. So you want a good gun and bullet combination that's going to put them down fast and leave you a lot of blood on the ground so you can trail them. This is more the typical kind of brush we have here, and hogs like to live in this stuff. The thicker it is, the better they like it. So every time you shoot one and you've got to track them, this is the kind of thing you're tracking them through. Really miserable to have to crawl through that stuff and fight briars all the way through it. So you want something that's going to put them down fast. Now, for years, handgun hunters have liked these hard cast lead bullets. I've told you my thoughts on the matter, but you notice this lead bullet here for the 45 Colt I've loaded. It's got a big flat meplat on the front of it. And in theory, this is a Keith style bullet. It's got a flat meplat and it's got a shoulder here. They used to say, the old timers, that shoulder cut a good, that flat edge, that square shoulder, cut a good hole. And I kind of bought into that for a while, but I really couldn't see much effectiveness out of that. And, You know, they're going to penetrate through anything, but I have had much better luck. This is a 45 Colt. That's a Hornady XTP bullet that I've hand loaded. That's a good, tough hollow point. Now, some hollow point bullets jacketed hollow point bullets are way too soft, and especially if the velocity is really fast and they hit that hard gristle plate shield I was talking about, they're just going to blow up and they're not going to make it through the vitals. So if you do use a jacketed hollow point, you need to make sure it's a good, tough one, not a real fragile, self-defense bullet that blows up on impact. You want a tough one that's going to kind of stay together. This here, believe it or not, is just a 10mm SIG V-crown bullet, and I was real skeptical of that, but I have had pretty good luck with that. I don't think that's in the same class as this Hornady XTP, but that's the way I would go. I would either go, I like a good, tough, solid, jacketed hollow point bullet. I don't have any of those with me right now, but a good, expanding, jacketed soft point kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It'll penetrate and expand. But I've shot enough hogs with these solid lead bullets, moving really fast, big heavy slugs, and they go right in and out, but they do not leave a good blood trail. And like I said before, if that hog runs off 600 or 700 yards into thick brush and you have no way to find him, very, very little blood, you're down on your hands and knees looking for blood, and you've got to chop your way through brush every 5 feet. They just don't work nearly as good as an expanding bullet, in my opinion. Now, hogs make really interesting European mounts. And the good thing about them, you can make them for free, and if you boil the head out, anybody can do it. Especially if you start shooting a lot of them, it gets expensive trying to mount them, but if you've got a whole barn full of them, I like to do it that way. But let me mention on these tusks, when I boil them, I like to pull that tusk out to show it off. This much of the tusk, when that hog is alive, is not showing. There's a lot of that big tusk that'll be down in here in the jaw. But after you boil that skull out, you can pull the tusk out a little bit like that to show the way it looks. Just to give you guys an idea how tough these things are, a while back one of my boys killed a hog. It was a big, healthy wild boar, and I didn't notice anything about it, but I cut the head off and I was boiling the skull to make a European mount. And after I was done, I noticed something a little bit strange. But if you look right here, somebody had shot this hog with a crossbow, and there's a crossbow broadhead way up there into his skull. And he had been living with that in him, and this had completely healed over, and there was I couldn't even see a scar. But that just kind of gives you an idea about how tough these things are. If you really want an exciting challenge, hunt the poor man's grizzly. I think you'll like it. I'll see you guys next time. Buckhorn Hill Outdoors.